Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. Mike, we are actually going to do Best New Comics 2 weeks in a row. We had a nice
Best
little
new
month gap.
comics.
Always good to mention the ones that are out there. Sometimes you and I critique things on here, and I think it's important if you're going to critique stuff to call things out that are doing well. And there are always a couple good comics on the shelf to pick up. Today we're going to mention, I don't think there was anything extremely remarkable this week, but there are a few solid series I wanted to point out, a few interesting concepts, a few interesting things that started. And so we wanted to kind of mention some of these. And I think there's some good jumping on points for folks this week is the main thing I say. And then we got actually, I think, three number one issues and then a mini series and an ongoing. So a little bit different there. I'll start with a book that I didn't think would be the top book of this week, but I think after reading it and going through it was fun. It was a great character examination. Um, Shredder from IDW gets a solo series. Great art in this. Dan Waters, the writer on this, he's doing a great job with Batman. I think it's Michelle Bandini doing art on it. Really cool, full of suitable action. I think what was great with this is a character like Shredder, you can really go crazy and have a lot of great action scenes with. And the fun of a villain book is you get to read a ruthless character who kind of acts outside of the rules. And I think that is what this captured perfectly. I will say I'm not up to date on everything continuity wise with Shredder as far as I know the character from the classics, but TMNT kind of lost me for a long time. And I think Jason Aaron's done a good job on the main series. This was a really cool jumping on starting point. And I think if you've ever liked Shredder or the Turtles, this is what you're looking for. Mike, I know you're not the biggest Turtles guy. You have some affinity, but you kind of
Right.
checked this out with me. What did you think overall?
I love the artwork. I like the design of the book. Just another credit to the indies when they take these properties. You can tell they really put a lot of muscle behind them. They're swinging for the fences. They put their A game in there, and it shows in this comic, like how brilliant the artwork was and the story. So, and I like how, even though you don't know what's going on, maybe
Mm-hmm.
in the main continuity, you can still get into it.
Yeah, I think they did a good job. And what I will always say, a number one's job is if you haven't been there for a bit, does it get you as a reader with enough of a hook to make you want to know what's next? While
Yes.
also, building on what and I think that's the cool thing that this I'll give credit is if you've ever thought Shredder was a cool character from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, this comic is for you. It's cool to pick up. Well, it could have dropped the ball later, of course, but for a first issue, it did everything it's supposed to. Got to give that a lot of credit there. We'll pivot to the one Marvel book for this week. We did a longer form review on it, but we'll kind of touch on it a little bit here just in case folks haven't seen that. Mortal Thor number one. We get a sort of reboot, continuation of the last series. However, when they do a number one, I think this did a great job of giving us a fresh starting on point with Thor. Did a good job of giving you something where, as a reader, if you've been out for a while, it changes things up. Mike, we've sat on this one for a little bit. How did you feel about Mortal Thor number one?
I'm into it. I'm willing to give it a try. And of course, being a Thor fan and not liking the continuity of the last several runs, I was anxious to try a new start. So I give it a thumbs up.
Yeah, I think overall the cool thing with it is if we're getting more of Thor with a secret identity kind of thing, that like the Donald call back to kind of the Donald Blake, Jake Olsen sort of thing. I think this one he has is I'm trying to remember the name he's using in this. It's from like the Thor 300 issues. I think it's Sigurd or something like that. It's just cool to see them try to do something different with Thor because I think it was a very stagnant book. It was a little stale. And so I think the cool thing, the credit to this, Mike, is it's going to make you buy a couple Thor issues in a row, and hopefully, with as much as you love the character, it kind of reignites you being able to check out a
Right.
Thor book.
I haven't
So
done that in a
that
while. So yes.
no good overall on that. That's the only Marvel recommendation we have for the week. Three DC books for this week. Um, so I'll start with the non-Batman, and then I got two Batmans this week. Superman 29. Josh Williamson. We're kind of in the middle of a Superman event. This is called Legion of Darkseid. It's the second part of it. Essentially, the Legion of superheroes has been corrupted by Darkseid. Superman's trying to figure out what's going on. You get a very fourth wall breaking appearance from Superboy Prime as the character does it. Mike, I think the thing that I've enjoyed about Superman, and I think what's been really cool about 2025, Superman is fun again. And I think that's one of the cool things we're seeing, whether it's this book, whether it's Mark Waid on Action Comics, I think even Dan Slott on the Superman Unlimited book they're doing, they are having fun with Superman again. For a while, he felt stale and boring. And I think they're really exploring some of the cool things with him. How do you feel like DC's handling Superman this year, Mike, as far as across all the platforms?
I like the turn on the character because we've gone down the deep, dark, depressing Superman road for quite a while now. And this is a breath of fresh air. Like the movie, I think as a whole, they're kind of, envisioning Superman in more of his true light. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think it's always cool when you get to kind of see the character in his classic incarnation that everybody really wants to see. And so I think it's great to see Superman actually act like Superman again. We got so much injustice Superman, evil Superman, and you throw that in addition to Omni Man and some of these other ones. It's just ridiculous. So I think it's really, really cool to see the fun come back to Superman
Yep.
again as a character. Last two we'll sort of point out here, and then we have one kind of graphic novel we'll mention. This one I'm a little trepidatious on recommending, but I think the overall point of this line of comics works. Immortal Legend Batman, #1. This is kind of a crazy space-based, almost
Show some of the
anime
art. Show me some of the
inspired.
art.
Yeah, you kind of get this, and I think they did a cool job with the Batman
The
costume
art is really
redesign.
cool. I like it.
Here's what I'll say. Was this a great comic as far as am I like, man, rush out and pick that thing up? Not really. But what I will give it credit for, it's interesting, it's got a different plot, and what I'll give it, it's under the Elseworlds banner. And I used to love when DC really went to town on those Elseworlds stories. Stuff like Gotham by Gaslight, I think what was it, Crimson Mist, the one where Batman turns into a vampire. You used to have so many cool stories that they just let these creators come in, do all these crazy things. And I think if they're going to do that again, we and you and I might have called for comics to be fun again. And that's what I will give this. This is a fun comic book. Is it structurally the most solid plot wise and all that? Probably not. But the whole thing is, it was a fun comic book. And I do think for a different kind of audience who just wants a crazy take on Batman, I think you'll have fun with it. Mike, I know we've been talking a lot about this. What was your thoughts on like Elseworlds when they used to do those kind of
I
stories?
give I give it a thumbs up, and I think my opinion in general is a lot of the crazy stuff that they have decided to throw into continuity, both Marvel and DC, would have
Hmm.
better served the character as an Elseworld story. They could have been constrained and just kind of ran with it, like in this book, and just had fun with it. So I'm all for it. When you want to try something crazy and different, do like they used to do in the old days and make it a what if or whatever.
Yeah, Elseworlds, what if always fun to see those. Last book we'll recommend for the week: Robin and Batman, Jason Todd, #3. Jeff Lemire and Dustin went on this. This series they did one about 2 years ago with Dick Grayson. They pivoted here to do the Jason Todd story. I think what was really cool about this book, one, I love when comic books remember that the Robins are not Batman's sidekicks; they are his children. That Dick Grayson is his adopted kid, that Jason Todd was his adopted, and you can go Ward or whatever terminology they want to use. They are his kids. And what I thought with this is they did a real cool examination of how different Jason Todd was than Dick Grayson, the challenges that that posed to Bruce, the challenges that posed to Alfred. But it also, I thought, is a great moment where Jason is kind of going towards the dark and about to cross a line, and you see Batman break through to him and kind of just hug and embrace the kid. And I think that is the coolest thing with Batman is you have to write Batman as a guy who understands the trauma that these kids have gone through that he's made the Robins. I love when they remember that. And yes, I love the suitably cool BA Batman moments, the flipping out of the shadows and knocking people out. But I love when they examine Bruce Wayne's humanity, especially as a father. I thought that was really cool. Mike, how do you feel about them and what they did with this series as far as examining that side of Bruce Wayne?
I think I think it's good character development because the whole origin of Batman is this tragic childhood event. So you can imagine this fictional character, if he were real, would have a real soft spot for kids. And that's what I always didn't quite relate to some of the harder edge that they took, especially in the comics and also in the TV show like the Teen Titans. I mean,
Hmm.
was not a good father figure. And like, you could say that if he was that dark, he wouldn't be a good father figure, but you could also argue the other way. And I think as far as more powerful and more emotional storytelling, it was very touching to see that panel. I don't know if you have that panel ready.
Yeah,
Uh,
unquote.
it was really touching to see that moment. And that's more of the Bruce Wayne that I imagine how
Yeah,
he
no,
would be.
you get something like that there, and I think um I think that's the balance of Batman. And I think one of the things is for every fan who thinks The Dark Knight from Frank Miller is the definitive version of Batman, there are equally justified fans who think the Adam West Batman is Batman. And you have to find a way to blend those two versions of the character. And I think what I'll give Jeff Lemire, I think he did a great job of that. I think he
Yeah,
found a way to present to Batman that if you are a fan of the Frank Miller stuff, there's still enough of the hard edge, analytical, smart, brutal Batman, but there is also enough of that humanity of it's a hero. And I love when they remember that, like, just because he doesn't smile all the time doesn't mean that Batman's a
right.
jerk or that he
Yeah.
can't relate to people or that he doesn't care about his kids. And so I love when they remember that. I thought this was a really cool examination. I hope they
I
continue this series.
I think the part of Batman that dictates that he can't relate to people, while that might be true in a sense for that character, but the ones that he could relate to the most are his wards, his adopted children. Those are the people that, you really need to see a human connection with.
Yeah, for sure. So really cool to see DC examine that. I hope they do a third series with Tim Drake. It's been cool to see them kind of do the Robins across the timeline on it. I think Tim Drake would be an interesting one to examine if they do that next. So hopefully we see that continue. We'll kind of close out with one here, Mike. I'll throw a curveball at you at the end. You and I have talked a lot about DC's great characters, and there was a really cool graphic novel. We didn't spotlight it last week, but we can actually get to it this week. DC's Finest. This is a new line of comics that DC's been doing. Yes, there's Batman stuff, but one of the things they've been doing is they've been embracing some of their awesome characters that don't get the spotlight. And there was one that came out, DC's Finest, Hawkman, Wings Across Time. Gardner Fox with Joe Kubert art for Hawkman. And I think really cool stuff in this and that crazy sci-fi adventures. You get these are just classic stuff from, the early 60s and things like that. I love when DC, especially reprinting some of these that have never been reprinted before. You and I spotlighted the Blue Beetle one that came out a few months. I will preface again the price point on these a little bit high. I think 39 if you get it standard. You can always do the Amazon route and get it a little bit cheaper. But it's cool to see them focus on a character like that and release something for fans. Mike, seeing DC embrace and send some of these, we've seen Plastic Man get a release out of this collection, Metamorpho, Blue Beetle. Now we get a cool Hawkman one. How do you feel DC's doing with all these embracing these classic stories?
It's amazing. But when you think of the master that was Joe Kubert and how he cut his teeth on drawing Hawkman in the 40s, it was, other than Tarzan and his war stuff, the superhero character that most fit Joe Kubert's style was the Hawkman. And he didn't get to draw a whole bunch of him in the 60s. Most of those comics, when he had his own run in the 60s, was Murphy Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, he did, when Hawkman did his reappearance, I think it was in Justice League. I believe Kubert drew that one, but it was always kind of odd. And the way the story goes is that he was busy. He was doing an army comic strip. He was doing the war comics, and he had a lot on his plate. And so they got the great Murphy Anderson to draw, which Murphy's Anderson's art was amazing. But
Yeah, Murphy
every
Anderson, a lot of him
once
featured in this one as well.
every once in a while through the decades, they would throw a Hawkman at Joe Kubert, and it was amazing the way he drew the Hawkman. his brushing and his ink style is really suited to that it's more of an aggressive inking style that you can see in Hawkman, and that's the beauty of Joe Kubert. Nobody could do it like him.
No, really, really cool. I think the one we're anticipating too. I know next month, I believe middle of September, DC's doing another collection, The Spectre. I think it's called The Wrath of the Spectre. Gardner Fox, Murphy Anderson, Neil Adams collecting their run on the Spectre stories. I love this line of comics that they're doing. And there's so many cool DC characters who just some of these stories just disappear across time. It's just so hard to track them down, and they've never been collected like this. So I think it's really, really great to see it. Especially, I know $40 higher price point, but I will say most of the
But
time to collect these, it used to be these omnibuses that were
yeah,
$125. I think these are cool, sizable chunks, and they're releasing really different characters that are coming out. I know they have the Spectre one coming out next month. They've done Hawkman. I know there's the Big Five Arrive War comics coming out, which I think is going to have Kanigher, Kubert, that kind of stuff on it. I mean, they're highlighting a lot of great stuff from DC, and so wanted to call that out as well because I think that's one of the better reads anybody can do is to explore some old school Hawkman comic books and see what made these characters great. That would be our best new comics for the week, folks. Let us know what you think down below. Did you check any of these out? If we missed anything, if you think there was a great book that we missed, please feel free to spotlight it down below. We may even check it out for next week if there's a great series we're missing. As always, folks, thank you for watching. God bless you. You have a great rest of your day.
thanks everybody.